All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the UX Design Lab livestream. It has been a while, and so we are so excited to welcome you all back and talk about UX best practices for community and collaboration UX. To introduce myself again, my name is Jenny, and I am the host of the UX Design Lab series and a UX engineer at Appian working on Agent Studio. Here we focus on UX design skills for low-code developers like yourselves, and we have our UX experts give feedback on your submissions. As always, we love engagement, so please add any questions or comments in the chat. Let me hand it off to our UX expert for the day, Christine Danzy.
Hi everyone, it's Christine again. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a UX manager and I've been at Appian almost 11 years. These days I'm usually working across our procurement solutions, but today I get to participate again in one of these live streams. Today we'll be focusing on community and collaboration, as Jenny mentioned. And why is this important? So great collaborative design is really what makes an app feel dynamic and engaging, right? It's about moving past the dynamic screens and forms and building a space where people can actually connect. So today we'll be looking at a couple of themes such as social engagement, making sure features like comments and sharing feel natural and easy to use, information hierarchy, so using patterns like threaded conversations to keep discussions organized and easy to follow, and community validation, right? Utilizing, features like upvotes and tags to highlight valuable content. Ultimately, we want to turn our functional apps into connected workspaces where working together feels a bit more seamless. So we've selected a few of your screens today to kind of talk through them, and thanks for those who presented.
All right, perfect. So we have three deep dives and then three lightning rounds. So let's jump right into our first interface. This interface was submitted by Anita from Yexel, and it is an Idea Hub application that's designed to foster innovation and collaboration within the organization by providing a centralized platform where employees can submit, explore, and engage with ideas. So their target users are reviewers. And yeah, Christine, what were your first thoughts when we landed on this page?
Yeah, so what I really liked about this UI is we have a lot of interesting, components all kind of organized together. Right? Like you see, there's like this weekly highlight section. You can see most voted ideas, most discussed, fastest implemented. I really like that, right? It bubbles up some of that key information for whoever's landing on this page. And you also see a kind of similar section in the bottom middle, trending ideas, right? So like maybe ideas that are being actively discussed, maybe more recent.
Mhm.
Um, both both kind of similar though in a sense that they bubble up kind of like recent or interesting topics. And so just kind of be mindful of the type of sections you include for your engagement and in ways that they might overlap. Right. So we might consider actually consolidating these two sections. And also what's interesting is one of these cards is in the middle of the page, one is at the bottom of the page. So now the user is kind of scanning and zigzagging a bit when this information is pretty relatable to each other, right? So I'd even suggest maybe bubbling this up maybe into that right pane on the dashboard.
Mhm.
I know we currently have this weekly analysis chart, which is really interesting, right, in terms of metrics. Maybe this would be better for a kind of data or admin view, maybe not necessarily an end user. This might seem a little too kind of data heavy for them at this level. So maybe we'd bubble up slash consolidate our weekly highlights, trending ideas to this side nav to kind of keep that more focused area there. But the idea is there, right? Like bubbling up that engagement to easily scan and just be thoughtful about how you organize or where you present that information.
Yeah, 100%. There are a lot of things with a lot of community UIs and collaboration where is dense information. We've had a previous UX live stream on, dashboards and being able to actually see that information hierarchy and how it plays out with dense information. So it is interesting to see those concepts also in this UI.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I just noticed kind of talking about the way that we've had to have our eyes dance around and explore things.
Yeah.
I just clicked on this view action over here for all ideas and noticed that it updated this discussion area. But did you have any, thoughts on the relationship between these two?
Yeah, and I know we've kind of seen this pattern before where it's like, okay, maybe there's selection on the left and details on the right, but when you have that
Mhm.
pattern integrated with all these other child elements, it was a little hard to follow. Nothing wrong with kind of this type of pattern in general, but we did. I remember when we first explored this UI, we were playing spot the differences a bit, right? Like trying to figure out what actually changed on the screen. And then if you notice the section that actually changes, that discussion child card, we still just get the title of the idea and then we get another action called join. So it's almost like one action just directed us to another action. So we could even simplify this further and make it easier for the user where maybe that top level action was already just join, right? Or maybe
Mhm.
the title was a link that I could drill down and look into the idea and maybe see the existing discussions that are happening around that idea and then have the option to join at that level, right? So kind of making it easier for that user to explore and dive into that information without potentially cluttering the top level UI at the same time, right?
Right, just removing that friction a little bit and ensuring that user doesn't have to click many, many times to get to where they need to get to.
Exactly. We don't
Yeah,
want to make it hard for them, right? We want to make it easier for them to kind of join that discussion, get engaged, and yeah, and like you said, remove that friction.
right, exactly. And I just noticed that this idea hub has so many different components, and I was taking a look at the idea progress area and wasn't quite sure what this is, but it does seem to be a progress bar of sorts. I know we discussed this when we first looked at this interface, but yeah, maybe we could speak to a little bit of like some of these components and where they should land to make it easier for us to understand what they are and what they do.
Yeah, I think it's a good call out, especially because, we get to see the full UI, right? We kind of have this zoomed out a bit so we can see all sections of this, but be mindful of what actually your user is going to see by default and what information is going to, fall below the fold that they might have to scroll to. So it's interesting, right, with this component you've pointed out, right? It says your idea progress. I'm assuming this is maybe an idea I've submitted or this user submitted, it's in some sort of review status, and I guess it's at some sort of 50% completion. But with it being on the bottom left of the screen, something that seems pretty important maybe for me as the user who submitted that idea, we might want that to be a little more bubbled up, right? I land on here, maybe initially I see ideas or discussions related to what I've already interacted with. And then we kind of go down from there, right? So like things important to me and that I want to continue engaging in, new things in the community, and then maybe other further details. So this really goes back again to being mindful of how you organize your page and really being thoughtful about, what's important for the user to see initially when they land on here and what's more secondary that we don't mind that gets a little below the fold that they'll have to kind of explore and scroll to.
Yeah, 100%. I imagine that's really important for mobile views as well if you're just trying to check the progress of things and you want to know what's important to you. Um, Also, using wireframes and just figuring out the blocks of what's important and using text instead of the imagery, I feel like could be a really good way to do that
Right?
before you go into building out the UI.
Yeah, great tip.
Another thing that I noticed was this notification bar. This kind of sits right in the middle here. Do you have any tips on where informational warning banners and things like that should be living in your information hierarchy?
Yeah, and this seems like another one where, like, if we read it, so your AI powered timesheet build idea has three new comments, right? First, I like the idea that it's bubbling up
Mhm.
new activity. Hey, this something you posted has new comments. Let's go ahead and engage the user to go check it out, maybe respond to those comments. So the idea there is great, but the fact that the banner is like hidden kind of below the new ideas cards and in between the all ideas cards, it might get a little lost. Kind of similar to the Your Ideas Progress card we just talked about. This seems really relevant to me, and I'd want to probably see it as I initially land on the screen. So this seems like another element that would be worth like bubbling up to the top. Maybe once again thinking about, oh, could we combine this update and the idea progress update into like a
Mm.
notifications for you section, right? To really highlight it and consolidate it a bit better. So yeah, going back to the idea of finding related elements, grouping them together, and then organizing in a way that makes sense in terms of the priority order for that user.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. So before we move on, there are some really good elements overall and overall composition, but were there any things that we wanted to highlight before we went on to the next UI?
Yeah, I think the other component that I thought was interesting was I noticed they had this help assistant section. I'm sure this
Mm,
is something we're all kind of thinking about these days with AI. So I like that here, they were thinking about that, right? Oh, maybe there would be some sort of helper chat experience for the user to engage with, right? Um, by having it styled similar to the other child cards, it does get a little lost.
mm,
Also, I'd be curious how they planned on facilitating this kind of chat interaction in this small space. If anything, I'd probably slash recommend exploring like a side pane chat experience instead.
mhm.
Right, that's a pattern users are a little more familiar with in terms of having more space for that chat history, and giving it a little more of a focal point versus maybe it getting lost within the rest of the section.
Yeah, 100%. Even if it is having a little bubble that pops up and overlays, there are so many different chat patterns that are interesting, but just, understanding how dynamic layouts might update or change the 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 content that's on your page is definitely important.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anita. This was a great UI, and we really appreciate your effort. All right, so next we have a UI submitted by Gerson Diaz from Persistent. This is a platform called MedReview. It is a unified interface for healthcare professionals to collaboratively validate clinical decisions and review research papers and protocols. So, yeah, overall, when we landed on this page, there's a very clean look, a very clear, theming here. But what's your initial reaction to this UI?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I really like the clean organization of it, right? We know we're on like a med review. We have these high level KPIs of the kind of engagements we have, right? You see total protocols, pending review, needs review. That's really nice. And then kind of a clear list of those protocols or items in review, right? So a nice kind of top level card that you can then drill down into, right? Kind of a clear structure, clear pattern. Feel like most people landing on here would kind of understand the elements and how to engage with it. So I think that's a nice starting point there. And then, yeah, as we drill in, we get to look into one of these protocols in review. We see we have some tags at the top and like kind of discussion board at the bottom. So once again, kind of a clear structure there.
Yeah, this definitely has a great use of tags, making sure that some of those themes of the content are bubbled up here. However, I did notice that I initially was a little bit confused thinking that some of these actions were tags as well. So in terms of really differentiating actions versus tags and ensuring that the user knows that these are things that they can act upon, do you have any recommendations here for Gerson?
Yeah, and similarly, when I initially just scanned the form, I just grouped all those together as tags. And yeah, only
Hmm.
until you start reading, the text, you realize, oh, I can upvote it, I can share it, and then there's attachments there. I might have, updated that text there to be like upload attachment to also be consistent in terms of the phrasing of an action. But yeah, we realized, oh, these are ways that users can engage and like share with others this protocol. So definitely good practice to be mindful of the patterns you're using for different elements and making sure the styling is distinct enough so the user doesn't accidentally group them with other non-related elements, right? So right now they're
Hmm.
all gray, so I thought they were all tags. So maybe instead I would use, maybe secondary inline button stylings, so it's very clear that I can interact with them. And that way, these are a great form of these engagement patterns, right? Like upvoting, sharing, and you want to make sure users identify that easily and clearly. So just being
Hmm.
mindful of what styling you're using for some of your interactions.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of just, the tags in general, they, had some great tags here, but do you have any recommendations regarding how tags are used in collaboration and community UIs? I think it's something that I see often in a lot of these collaboration-based interfaces.
Yeah, and because it's not just about having metadata, right? I think
Hmm.
on one hand you can like bubble up a theme or a topic for something like this page in review, but it's also I think an interesting way to help users discover related information, right? So maybe
100%.
clicking on this tag would allow me to view other related protocols, or maybe we reduce that step even further and we automatically show related protocols for them in line that they can then explore and see discussions and chat with, right? So you're kind of driving that engagement even further, not just within this protocol, but other protocols that this user might find interesting or relatable.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely would love to be able to just drill into one of these. And, if I were a med reviewer, to be able to say, oh, I actually want to see some other discussions related to post-op or anticoagulation. So, yeah, that's a really good tip. All right, so let's go down a little bit further in the interface to the peer review discussion area. What are some of your thoughts regarding this thread? Yeah.
Yeah. So right away, I saw that helpful tag, which I really liked,
Mm,
right? It's a way that at a glance as a user, I can kind of see, maybe based on votes or feedback, this seems to be the most, helpful comment related to this review. And so it's just like helps me find that information faster. We see some clear patterns in terms of like the thumbs up icon for liking it. Looks like I can reply to a specific post, or there's that top level post section. So it looks like I can either reply directly to this review or directly to an individual. So it's good to spot those like kind of common patterns, right?
yeah, 100%. And I'm interested to see what would happen if I reply here and how that would look in terms of
Right.
the relationship between those responses to the comments.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if it was a flat list and then it might be confusing who they were replying to, or if they used indentation or other alternative styling to kind of signify that it's a child element of the main comment.
Yeah, so we'll be able to see some of those examples in the future interfaces. But yeah, this is a really, really beautiful interface. Thank you so much, Garrison. Yeah, we really appreciate the submission as well. So next up for our last deep dive, we have one submitted by Shrivishnu, and this is a gaming community interaction hub. So a little bit separated from our common Appian use cases, but this is an interesting one, showing this unified platform designed to bring gamers together in a single immersive and collaborative space. And there are a few elements here that can be used across all different use cases as well. So, yeah, Christine, what are some of your initial reactions when we saw this interface?
Yeah, this one was a lot of fun because I feel like sometimes in design we talk about gamifying experiences, and here we actually have an experience in a gaming context. So a lot of fun there. But what I really liked off the bat was just the organization of the screen, right?
Hmm.
They're utilizing the left pane for like high level engagement slash community topics, right? So you have upcoming events, there's a leaderboard, the center pane, really easy to recognize as the main kind of collaborative place where people post, can comment, can like, can share. And then in the far right, it looks like items more directly related to maybe myself as the user, so my personal notifications and direct messages, right? So very clear to understand how I interact with this screen, what parts are important to me, and how I can engage with other members of this community.
Yeah, I did love that too. I thought it was really easy to understand what's happening here and what my attention should be drawn to as well, and knowing that these are things that are directly related to me. And I also loved that, I could scroll in the center feed pane without having to lose some of the sight of my notifications or upcoming events as well. So this is, using Appian's pane layout. which is so helpful and useful and really great for a lot of these community interfaces where oftentimes there will be long threads. But like Christine mentioned, sometimes we'll also have um, the like bubbled up events and things that are related to the community and to the user. So this is where that information hierarchy and ensuring organization is super important. So then you can separate it in this way.
Yeah, exactly. I will say with the right pane, with the notification section, with the use of that kind of mail icon, I thought that represented like a message. But then as I was looking at the details of each of those items, they seemed more like notifications for me. I
Mhm.
really like the notification types, right? It shows when I'm mentioned in a discussion, ask me to join another community or a squad, which is great, kind of furthering my engagement. And then, oh, it looks like I received 5 new upvotes for something I posted, right? Like that's really nice. Like I come back here and I can see the activity that's happened. Um, but then it was only until I saw the messages below that I was like, oh, those are like direct messages to
Mhm.
me versus like, so like kind of just be mindful again of like the kind of iconography and the styling for some of your sections and the pre-existing patterns that people might be assuming when they view that.
Yeah, 100%. I now that you mention it, I think that my mind did go to seeing this as mail or messages as well. And it might have been more common to use like a bell notification or even just a dot that shows that the notification's been unread or hasn't had attention. But do you have any other best practices or patterns that people use for notifications that would immediately scream out, this is a notification?
Yeah, I actually really like the ones you already mentioned, right? Like just being thoughtful of the type of icon. I've also seen kind of the bell used before, and so making it seem more of it being like a system level, message versus like an individual or direct message, like someone is like you said, emailing you. Like definitely thought of like that email experience there. So yeah, I think Jenny had some good pointers there for that. But yeah, overall, really great in terms of the kind of patterns being used. And even when
Mhm.
we go into the middle pane again, I like that you can filter on the different type of threads, right? Like already giving that user options to explore, making it easy for them, right? A lot of the times, right, you're just trying to think of how do you make this just easy for your user to find what they may be interested, right? Like we want to reduce that kind of manual, exploration as much as possible and bubble things up for them where we can.
Yeah, and I noticed that some of the use of tags here also make it really easy, especially on this dark mode background, which we saw tags being used in the MedReview and the light mode background as well. But seeing these different colors as categories and it really pops out to me as being able to categorize and understand what this specific post is related to. So I thought that was really interesting as well in their use of tags.
Yeah, exactly. Another great way, again, right? Like, oh, in this type of use case, you probably want people to find other communities to join or other related gaming topics, right? So by
Mhm.
bubbling those up and making it easier for them to find, you're allowing them to engage more with other communities of similar interests.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just like in MedReview, if I were a gamer, it would definitely be really useful to discover and really get engaged with the platform and continue going maybe into some of those rabbit holes of interesting topics that are things that I want to see. So that's a really, really good point. All right, before we move on into the lightning round, is there anything else on this interface that we want to highlight and things that our viewers could take into their own interfaces?
I think the biggest takeaway here is, you know, we talked about organization of the content and make it easier for the user to, find related information. I think this one did a great job at that. So, yeah, thank you again for the submission.
All right, so now we're ready for our fun lightning round where we highlight these key features that we want you to take away. So there are certain elements of these interfaces that we thought were fun or interesting to share. So this one is a movie night planning sort of poll voting interface submitted by Sivaraj from TCS. What do we want to highlight here so that our users take away?
Yeah, well, what we thought was fun here was, we've seen a lot of examples where it's like a chat engagement pattern, but here this was actually like kind of soliciting voting, right? Like maybe you're trying to plan an event, maybe you're submitting like a survey. So we could see some version of this being integrated within an application and how you might solicit your users to give feedback. So here, people are voting on a movie they all want to watch. So it's an interesting additional pattern for how to incorporate an engagement tool within an experience. Also, if we look down at the messages, we've talked about, threading and how you might show that someone is commenting on another message, but we hadn't seen it as much. And so here we see an example of using, indentation to signify that
Hmm.
someone has responded to another user. So, right, like here we can actually see what that visually would look like. Now, I know they are also using decorative bars, I guess, to distinguish between the main comment versus the child comment, but be mindful of how many decorative bars you have on the screen. It can get a little cluttered in terms of like line weight. I would probably simplify that, maybe removing the decorative bar on the main one. The decorative bar on the child one isn't as bad, but maybe a lighter color. Maybe you want to reserve that
Hmm.
kind of accent blue for your actions within your interface. But yeah, it's kind of nice to see someone showing the kind of threading experience here.
Yeah, it's very clear to see that this is related to, as a response to this one. And what happens if there are like 20 responses, possibly to one of the other parent level replies?
Yeah, no, that's a great question in terms of, kind of scaling a chat, right? Because maybe all these other core messages have 10 other replies to them, and now this whole experience can get like really long.
Hmm.
So kind of utilizing collapsed and expand states. So if I'm not actively maybe engaging in that particular comment, maybe I have it collapsed, and maybe I see one comment and then I see a text that says, view 10 more comments, right? So it's like I can still get a glimpse of the kind of discussion that's happening, but without being overwhelmed by seeing everything all at once. So yeah, definitely kind of utilizing some like hide show patterns there to, keep it a little more compact.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've seen in even social media or other interfaces where it doesn't show, it might show the top few comments and then it's an expand and collapse, or it might just show that very top parent comment as well. But definitely something to think about when you have a community that's very active and engaged.
Yeah, which we hope so. Right.
Exactly. So next on our lightning round, we have it was an interface submitted by Jones Prakash Selvaraj from Yexel. This is an upvoting. Sorry, this is a interface for a Looply application, which has this sort of discussion forum, a navigation bar, and a leaderboard. But this is kind of a common pattern that we've seen. What did we want to highlight here?
Yeah, so I like the other kind of social engagement patterns. Right, we have the upvoting in the card. That's something pretty recognizable. Right, shows how many people have liked it, voted it up. I can see like the top one. We also have like the tags for like saved and subscribed. So now I, as a user, know, oh, I'm already actively subscribed to this chat or this group. Kind of easy identification there for me. And then in the right pane, I like their leaderboard styling, right? That's another kind of gamification tactic we've seen in other screens where you're seeing how much engagement individuals have in this community, and kind of like the styling there, and seeing who you're following or who you're suggested to follow. So yeah, another good example of these different kind of social patterns that we've seen in other experiences.
Yeah, I noticed that, they use a similar pattern to like Reddit, or they also, if I were a contributor to a community, being able to see that I am maybe the top contributor would definitely be a motivating factor to answer and engage with the content. So that is a really good point.
And I
Is
think
there
something
anything? Mhm.
else we noticed is like if you scroll, this screen might not be using our
Mm,
pane component, and so everything kind of scrolls together. So, you know, an example here of where we could have utilized that component to allow users to explore the center pane topics without necessarily having to move like the side navigation pane on the left or the kind of core top level topics on the right.
yeah, that's a good point. Just like the deep dive that we had, I think having that pane layout really helps with, being able to still see that navigation, still see your chat lobbies, but being able to go deep into some of these trending topics and the feed in the middle.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jones from Yaxel. And our very last lightning round is this very interesting example submitted by Sudarshan Salaimalai from Yaxel as well. What did we think about this one?
Yeah, this one was a lot of fun, and honestly, I don't think I've seen a UI like this. But right, it seems like this is a way to help make a decision on where to eat. So we have our left pane that I guess here represents the logical brain. Maybe we're like pulling out just like data or metrics about each location that we could eat at. And then on the right side is like the human engagement and human preferences. So people are responding with what they're craving or what they prefer better. And then I guess it kind of utilizes both these sides of the brain, so to speak, to make a decision. So I thought this was really fun in terms of showing how you would collaborate with an intelligent layer alongside a human layer and make a decision. So I thought this was like a really fun use case that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, definitely a very creative use case, which I could imagine would be helpful when making a decision, especially if you have a lot of, friends or a lot of people that you're trying to get a consensus between, being able to analyze and pick out some of those preferences and combine it with, pricing or rating or some of these more quantitative metrics to be able to show what the top decision is. Because, yeah, decisions are not always based on numbers. Sometimes there are these qualitative metrics that you can't really measure,
Hmm.
unless, but now
Exactly.
with AI and everything, it's easier to be able to pull those pieces out.
Yeah. How do we put those together and collaborate with our intelligent tools alongside our kind of experiences and rationale too. And yeah, and again in the right pane we see an example of some threading
Mm,
styles, right? They have a different card styling for like the child elements. It's a really nice pattern to see. They also have like the helpful tags and like a new tag, so you can see maybe what's happened since you last view this page. So, and a lot of nice little patterns here as well that we could highlight.
yeah, some really, really great takeaways. Thank you so much, Sudarsan. This is a really fun one to look through. Um, but yeah, with that, let's kind of go over all the takeaways from today's uh, UX design lab. We had a lot of really interesting interfaces and some things that we can learn and bring into our own collaboration and community UIs going forward. So yeah, Christine, take it away with some of the things that we've learned.
Yeah, so just want to go over the core themes that hopefully you've kind of pulled upon from our discussion. So one, establish clear content hierarchy, right? So really think about how your high level topics are organized all the way down to how users actually interact with each other, commenting, replying, etc. So yeah, consider threading, drill downs to keep conversation structured. Next, really surface engagement highlights, right? We don't want to like bury like votes or tags or things that should be recognized, right? Put them in a place where users can see without always needing to drill down, like bubble up that high level information, right? Like the weekly
Hmm.
highlights or trending topics, things that they can get a takeaway from. And then promote existing collaborations, right? So we really want to make sure we keep users engaged in their current communities We don't want to rely on just like one way to pull them back in, right? We've seen using notifications, upvote alerts,
Hmm.
event reminders, right? So continuing them to be involved in the areas that they already are engaged with. And then alongside that, right, facilitate future connections. So they're already engaged in certain areas, but how do we keep them exploring and engaged in other areas that they might be interested in, right? So we've seen theme tags, we've talked about suggestions to related content, and so this allows users to keep exploring things in their community and continue that engagement, not just with the things they're already interested in or subscribed to. And then at the end of the day, use common collaboration patterns, right? So just think about other experiences. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? We know there's certain chat icons, reply icons people are used to. Keep those
Hmm.
familiar patterns integrated, and utilizing standard terminology too. We don't need to reinvent, common threads and how we describe them. It can be pretty obvious for users, and so overall, we just want to make sure that things are recognizable and easy to use for any user. Yeah.
Great. Yeah,
Um,
those are great takeaways to learn. Definitely a lot of interesting like psychology and UX principles that we can use here as well.
so thanks so much again for all our submitters who submitted something for this presentation. Just want to say that all participants will receive a 2026 UX design badge in Appian
Woo.
Community. Thank you for your efforts.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And before we let everyone go, we do have one announcement. Appian World 2026 is coming up very soon, this month on the April 27th in Orlando, Florida. DevCon pre-conference on April 26th to 27 has some hands-on learning and networking workshops, and you can sharpen your skill in technical deep dives as well. So if you are interested, please sign up. Registration for Appian World is in the chat. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time.